Hey guys, this week we're going to be doing some equation work and specifically with some fractions. We know that fractions sometimes confuse people, sometimes it's the calculator. So we just want to work on that. So you can see there's 9 questions. Each day has 9 questions for notes and 9 questions for homework, and then there'll be a quiz on Friday. So let's go ahead and get started. It says, solve for x, show your work, give an answer as a simplified fraction. So we have 2/3 x equals 20. So remember, to get rid of a fraction, we can multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by 3/2 because that's going to give me x, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, 3 divided by 3 is 1, so that leaves me with 1x. What we do to one side, we do to the other. And instead of grabbing your calculator, which you could do, think about what this is going to give you. 20/2 is going to give me 10. So then I have 10 times 3, which is 30. Another quick thing about fractions, just a side note, is this could also be written as 2x/3 equals 20. Those are the exact same things. It's x being multiplied by 2 and divided by 3. Up here, x is being multiplied by the 2 and divided by 3. Those are the same thing. Number 2, we want to get k by itself. So I guess the directions should say solve for the variable, not x. Sorry about that. So we want to get k by itself. So first we get rid of adding and subtracting. So subtract 4. We get 1. Notice I'm showing my work. And then I want to get k by itself. So to get rid of this fraction, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. Do that to both sides. So that's going to give me 3. Remember, you can always check your work by plugging in your variable up at the very beginning. Okay. Number 3. Remember here in number 2, I said get rid of adding and subtracting first. Well, we can't get rid of the adding and subtracting here because that's really attached to this 5/9. So be careful there. Don't subtract 6 first. You could distribute if you wanted to, but you don't need to. The reason I wouldn't distribute here is because then you're going to get a fraction. You're going to get 5/9 w and a fraction here. So while that is an option, instead I would probably get rid of the fraction by multiplying by the reciprocal. That's going to give me w plus 6 on this side. And over here, again, yes, you can use a calculator. It does need to stay as a simplified fraction, but it's actually quicker without a calculator because 15/5 is 3, and 9 times 3 is 27. Then go ahead and subtract 6, you get 21. Okay, we will be using our our calculator a little bit, but for some of these easier ones, when there's like a 15 and a 5, a common factor, it's going to do it on paper. Number 4. Here we have m. We're trying to get m by itself. So we're going to get rid of this fraction by multiplying by the reciprocal. So that gives me just m on this side. Over here, a couple ways you could do it. We've talked about simplifying the 4 and the 2. That's going to simplify to be 2. So on the top, I have 6 over, and on the bottom, I only have 5 left because I've already simplified the 2, 6/5. If you want to do it a different way, if you don't like that simplifying, you can just do top times top, just 12, bottom times bottom, which is 10. And then those both have a factor of 2, so divide by 2, you get the same thing. I just divided by 2 at the very beginning and went from there. It's up to you. Number 5, we want to get y by itself, so we have a fraction here. Don't multiply by the reciprocal because it's being subtracted. So we want to do the opposite of subtract, which is add. So let's add 6/5. Negative 6/5, positive 6/5 cancels. That's why we did it. Now over here, we can type that into our calculator and get into a fraction. That's fine. And I will allow you to do that sometimes. but I'm going to practice here showing you how to do it by hand. So if this denominator is a 3 and this denominator is a 5, they could have a common denominator of, let me do a different color, of 15. So if I turned 1/3 into a fraction with a 15 as a denominator, I would have 5/15. Multiply by 5, that would give me 5/15. If I wanted to turn this fraction into a denominator with 15, I'd have to multiply by 3/3. So that would be 18. If I have 5/18 and 18/18, that gives me, 5/15 and 18/15, that gives me 23/15. Again, you can check that in your calculator. When you're all done, plug it in for y. Okay, let's look at number 6. Here's A. We want to get rid of this adding and subtracting first, so we're going to add 5/4. I have 2a equals 1/5 plus 5/4. Again, you could do what we did in number 5 and get a common denominator of 20. So I'm going to do that. And maybe in a couple here, we'll use a calculator to make it a little bit quicker, but this is good practice. So let's turn this into 20ths as a denominator. So it's going to be multiplied by 4/4. It's going to be multiplied by 5/5. So this fraction becomes 4/20ths. This fraction becomes 25/20ths. So what do I get here? I have 4/20ths plus 5 plus 25/20ths, which is 29/20ths. And finally, I need to divide by 2 to get rid of this. Now, how do I divide by 2? Because that looks pretty messy. So remember, instead of doing that, instead of having a division sign with another division, instead of dividing by 2 over here, we're just going to multiply by a half. Okay, so on the top I have 29. On the bottom I have 40. And that's my final answer. Number 7. Look where x is at. And let's try to get it by itself. So we need to get rid of this 10/3. It's being added, it's positive, so let's subtract 10/3. X over 5 equals 8 minus 10/3. So how am I going to do that? Well, let's turn this into thirds. So 8 times 3 is 24/3. So what I have here is this 8 is actually 24/3. Then I have the minus 10/3. 24 minus 10 is 14/3. Finally, multiply by 5. And 14 times 5 is 70 over 3. There we go. Okay, good. Number 8. Again, I'm trying to give you a lot of variety here because we know that sporadically throughout the course, in the next course you'll take in math, you'll come across fractions. We want you to be prepared for any type that you'll see. That's why there's quite a variety here. Number 8. Look what's happening over here on the left. These two numbers are just being added. It's just like if I were to say 5 plus 12 equals 4 plus x. We would combine these because they're like terms. So let's combine 5/8 and 7/3. Now we could get a common denominator of 24, but I will show you with a calculator if I can. So let's do a calculator real quick since we've done a lot of practice. Let's add those together. So you want to do parentheses, 5, then the divide by key, divided by 8, parentheses, plus 7/3. 7 divided by 3, parentheses, enter. Now, you guys have done this before. Let's turn this into a fraction. You remember you hit math. Your first choice is fraction, so you're ready to just hit enter, enter. 71/24. So let's go back to this. This is 71/24. We do want you guys to get a common denominator sometimes and do it by hand sometimes, but occasionally, if you're going to have to get a different denominator on both and deal with large numbers, we are okay occasionally with you using a calculator because that is good practice for you also. Make sure you turn into a fraction. Finally, we need to subtract 4. And again, we'll let you do this in your calculator, turn it into a fraction when you're done. So 71/24 minus 4. And then math, enter, enter, gives you -25/24. To do this by hand, what you would have done for this part right here is 71/24 minus 4. Well, that's going to have a denominator of 24 if we want them to be alike. So that's going to be 71/24 minus, then we'll need to do 4 times 24, which is 96. And then we can combine them now that they are alike. 71/24 minus 96/24 is -25. So exact same answer by showing your work. Now we did still show work up here, so that will count. On your homework, make sure you are showing the work, common denominators on some of them, using a calculator maybe on 1 or 2 of them. All right, last question. Notice you have x on both sides. So we're going to need to move those to the same side. We have constant terms on each side. Those will have to get moved too. You don't necessarily have to do it in the same order that I do, but for following notes, let's go ahead and do it that way. So I'm going to move this 3/4 over here. So subtract 3/4. What's going to happen when I take -1/4 minus 3/4? I'm going to get -4/4. And what's -4/4? 1. So I move this term over. Now let's move this 2/5 x to the other side. Subtract 2/5 x. So 4/5 x minus 2/5 x. They have a common denominator, so 4 minus 2 is 2/5 x. Finally, we've got to get x by itself. Remember, it's being multiplied, so to get rid of multiplication of a fraction, we can multiply by the reciprocal. So that's -5/2. All right, that's it. Make sure on your homework that you're showing your work, and you can submit it online. But let us know if you have any questions.